There is a lot happening inside you right now. Quietly, steadily, without any effort on your part. Your heart is beating. Your lungs are expanding and contracting. Somewhere deep inside your body, cells are dividing, signals are traveling, and processes that have no name in everyday language are simply continuing. They have been continuing since before you were born, and they will continue as you rest tonight. This is a video about the human body. Not a complicated or intense version of that subject. Just the quiet, steady, remarkable facts that make up what you are. Each one is simple. Each one is its own small thing. There is no story here that needs to follow from the last. Just one fact, and then another, and then another. You do not need to remember any of this. You do not need to stay awake for it. Let the words come in gently, and let them pass through just as gently. This is meant to be a soft place to rest your attention. So settle in. Let your body do what it already knows how to do. And let's begin. The human body contains approximately 37 trillion cells. Each one is a living unit carrying out its own set of functions, completely independent, and yet part of a system so coordinated it operates without conscious instruction. Your body produces around 25 million new cells every single second. At the same time, roughly the same number are breaking down and being cleared away. This cycle runs continuously, day and night, whether you are active or completely still. The adult human skeleton is made up of 206 bones. At birth, a baby has around 270 to 300 bones. As the body grows, many of these bones gradually fuse together, reducing the total number over the first 2 decades of life. Bone is not a static material. It is living tissue, constantly being broken down by cells called osteoclasts and rebuilt by cells called osteoblasts. Your skeleton is entirely replaced, piece by piece, roughly every 10 years. The femur, the large bone in your upper leg, is the longest and strongest bone in the human body. It can support roughly 30 times the weight of the average adult. Tooth enamel is the hardest substance the human body produces. It is even harder than bone, though unlike bone, it cannot regenerate once it has worn away. The smallest bone in the body is the stapes, located in the middle ear. It is roughly 3 millimeters long and is one of 3 tiny bones responsible for transmitting sound vibrations to the inner ear. Your ears never stop working. Even while you sleep, the ear continues to receive sound. The brain simply reduces its response to those signals during sleep, filtering them as less urgent. The human body maintains a core temperature of around 37 degrees Celsius under normal conditions. Variations of just a few degrees above or below this range can significantly affect the functioning of enzymes and other biological processes. The body regulates its temperature through several mechanisms. Sweating allows heat to escape through evaporation. Shivering generates heat through rapid muscle contractions. Blood vessels near the skin's surface can dilate to release heat or constrict to conserve it. Sweat glands are distributed across most of the body surface. There are between 2 and 4 million of them in total. The highest concentrations are found on the palms, the soles of the feet, and the forehead. The body can produce up to 10 liters of sweat per day under extreme conditions of heat and physical exertion. Under normal circumstances, the body loses water through sweat and breathing even when no visible perspiration is present. This is sometimes called insensible water loss. Water makes up approximately 60% of total body weight in an average adult. This proportion varies with age, sex, and body composition. Muscle tissue contains more water than fat tissue. The body's water is distributed across several compartments. Around 2/3 of it is found inside cells, in what is called the intracellular fluid. The remaining third is found outside cells, in blood plasma, the fluid surrounding tissues, and other spaces. The body loses water continuously through urine, breathing, sweat, and digestion. The sensation of thirst is triggered when the body's water content drops by as little as 1 to 2%. Even mild dehydration can affect concentration and physical performance. The kidneys play a central role in maintaining water balance. When the body needs to conserve water, the brain releases a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, which signals the kidneys to reduce the amount of water lost in urine. When water intake is high, the kidneys can produce large volumes of very dilute urine to eliminate the excess. Sodium is the most abundant mineral in the body's extracellular fluid. It plays a key role in regulating fluid balance, transmitting nerve impulses, and supporting muscle contraction. The body carefully maintains sodium concentration within a very narrow range. Calcium is the most abundant mineral in the body overall. Around 99% of the body's calcium is stored in the bones and teeth, where it provides structural strength. The remaining 1% circulates in the blood and soft tissues, where it is essential for muscle contraction, nerve signaling, and blood clotting. Iron is a vital component of hemoglobin, the protein in red blood cells that carries oxygen. The body stores iron primarily in the liver, spleen, and bone marrow, and it recycles iron from old red blood cells with considerable efficiency. Zinc is present in every cell of the body and is involved in over 300 enzymatic reactions. It plays a role in immune function, wound healing, protein synthesis, and DNA production. Magnesium is involved in more than 300 biochemical processes in the body. It supports muscle and nerve function, helps regulate blood sugar levels, and contributes to protein and DNA synthesis. Most of the body's magnesium is stored in bones and muscles. The human body produces its own supply of several vitamins. Vitamin D is synthesized in the skin when it is exposed to ultraviolet light from the sun. Vitamin K and certain B vitamins are produced by bacteria living in the gut. Vitamin D plays a central role in calcium absorption and bone health. It also has functions in immune regulation and cell growth. The skin produces it through a reaction involving a cholesterol derivative and ultraviolet B radiation. The liver stores significant quantities of fat-soluble vitamins, including vitamins A, D, E, and K. These can be drawn upon gradually as needed, which is why deficiencies in fat-soluble vitamins tend to develop more slowly than deficiencies in water-soluble vitamins. The human genome contains approximately 3 billion base pairs of DNA. If the DNA from a single human cell were stretched out in a straight line, it would measure around 2 meters in length. The DNA from all the cells in the body combined would stretch from the Earth to the Sun and back many times over. Despite being 2 meters long, the DNA in each cell is packed into a nucleus that is only about 6 micrometers in diameter. This is achieved through an elaborate system of coiling and folding, organized around proteins called histones. The human genome contains around 20,000 to 25,000 protein-coding genes. These make up only a small fraction of the total DNA. Much of the remaining DNA was once called junk DNA, but research has shown that large portions of it play regulatory and structural roles. DNA replication occurs every time a cell divides. The two strands of the double helix are separated, and each is used as a template to build a new complementary strand. The process is carried out by a complex of proteins and is remarkably accurate, with error rates of around 1 mistake per billion base pairs copied. Errors in DNA replication or damage from environmental factors can lead to mutations. The body has several systems for detecting and repairing DNA damage. Most errors are corrected before they can have any effect. Proteins are the workhorses of the cell. They are assembled from chains of amino acids, folded into specific three-dimensional shapes, and used for an enormous range of purposes including structural support, chemical reactions, transport, signaling, and immune defense. There are 20 amino acids used in human proteins. 9 of these cannot be synthesized by the body and must be obtained from food. These are known as the essential amino acids. Enzymes are a type of protein that speed up chemical reactions in the body. Without enzymes, most of the chemical reactions necessary for life would proceed far too slowly to sustain biological processes. Each enzyme is highly specific, typically catalyzing only one type of reaction. Myelin is a fatty substance that wraps around nerve fibers and segments. It allows electrical signals to jump from one segment to the next rather than traveling continuously along the entire length of the fiber, which dramatically increases transmission speed. The brain itself has no pain receptors. Headaches do not originate from the brain tissue itself but from the structures surrounding it, including blood vessels, muscles, and the membranes that enclose the brain. The brain is surrounded and cushioned by cerebrospinal fluid, a clear liquid that circulates through the brain and spinal cord. This fluid provides physical protection, removes waste products, and helps maintain a stable chemical environment for neural activity. During sleep, the brain's glymphatic system becomes significantly more active. This system clears waste products, including certain proteins associated with neurological conditions, from the brain tissue. Sleep appears to be an essential period of chemical maintenance for the brain. The cerebral cortex is the outermost layer of the brain. It is heavily folded, which allows a much larger surface area to fit within the limited space of the skull. If it were unfolded and laid flat, it would cover an area of roughly 2.5 square meters. The brain is divided into two hemispheres, left and right. These are connected by a thick band of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum, which allows the two sides to communicate and coordinate with each other continuously. The cerebellum, located at the lower back of the brain, contains more than half of all the neurons in the entire brain, despite making up only about 10% of its total volume. It is primarily involved in coordinating movement, balance, and fine motor control. The brainstem connects the brain to the spinal cord and controls many of the body's most fundamental automatic functions, including breathing, heart rate, blood pressure, and the sleep-wake cycle. The spinal cord runs from the base of the brain down through the vertebral column. It acts as the main communication highway between the brain and the rest of the body, carrying motor signals downward and sensory signals upward. The human nervous system is divided into two main parts. The central nervous system consists of the brain and spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system consists of all the nerves that branch out from the spinal cord and reach every part of the body. There are 12 pairs of cranial nerves that emerge directly from the brain rather than from the spinal cord. These nerves serve the head and neck, controlling functions like vision, hearing, facial movement, and the sense of smell. The autonomic nervous system operates largely below conscious awareness. It regulates internal organ function, including heart rate, digestion, gland secretion, and the dilation of blood vessels. It is divided into the sympathetic system, which prepares the body for activity, and the parasympathetic system, which supports rest and recovery. The human body has around 700 named muscles. Skeletal muscles, which are attached to bones and move the body, make up around 40% of total body weight in an average adult. The maximum heart rate declines with age at a rate of roughly 1 beat per minute per year. This reflects changes in the electrical conduction system of the heart and in the responsiveness of cardiac muscle to hormonal signals. Lung function also changes with age. The maximum volume of air that can be forcibly exhaled in 1 second, a measure called FEV1, declines at a rate of around 20 to 30 milliliters per year in healthy non-smokers after the age of around 30. The loss of elastic recoil in the lung tissue makes it harder to exhale fully. Kidney function declines gradually with age. The filtration rate of the kidneys decreases by around 1 milliliter per minute per year after the age of 40 in an average person. The kidneys also become less responsive to antidiuretic hormone, which can make it harder to concentrate urine efficiently. The digestive system generally maintains its function well into old age, though transit time through the gut tends to slow. The intestinal mucosa remains capable of absorbing nutrients effectively, though absorption of certain vitamins and minerals including calcium and vitamin B12 may become less efficient. Muscle mass declines with age through a process called sarcopenia, which begins gradually in the 30s and accelerates after the age of around 60. This loss is related to a decline in the number and size of muscle fibers, reduced responsiveness to anabolic hormones, and changes in the nervous system's control of muscle. The number of neurons in the brain decreases slowly with age, though the extent of this loss varies considerably between brain regions and between individuals. Changes in white matter integrity and in the efficiency of synaptic transmission appear to contribute more to age-related changes in cognitive function than neuron loss alone. The senses gradually become less acute with age. Hearing loss, particularly at high frequencies, is nearly universal with advancing age. Visual acuity may decline, and the ability to adapt to changes in light levels slows. The sense of smell becomes less sensitive, which can affect appetite and the enjoyment of food. Despite all of these gradual changes, the human body remains a remarkably adaptive and resilient system throughout life. Regular physical activity, adequate sleep, balanced nutrition, and social connection all support the maintenance of physiological function well into old age. The body you inhabit right now has been adapting and adjusting, renewing and repairing, without pause and without complaint, for every moment of your life. It does not require acknowledgement. It does not need recognition. It simply continues, as it always has, through every moment of activity and every moment of rest. And right now, in this quiet moment, it is doing exactly what it needs to do. Breathing slowly. Heart beating steadily. Everything inside you working gently and continuously in the soft and undemanding darkness of the night. There is nothing required of you. There is nowhere you need to be. The body knows what to do, and it is doing it, quietly and completely, as you rest. The largest muscle in the body by surface area is the gluteus maximus, located in the buttocks. The longest muscle is the sartorius, which runs diagonally across the front of the thigh from the hip to the knee. The smallest muscle in the body is the stapedius, located in the middle ear. It is less than 2 millimeters long, and its function is to dampen the vibration of the stapes bone in response to loud sounds. Muscles can only pull. They cannot push. Every movement that appears to be a push is actually the result of a different muscle on the opposite side contracting and pulling the structure in that direction. Muscles work in opposing pairs. When one contracts, the other relaxes. This coordination is managed automatically by the nervous system without conscious calculation on the part of the person moving. Cardiac muscle, which makes up the heart, is different from both skeletal and smooth muscle. It contracts rhythmically and continuously on its own without requiring a signal from the nervous system, though the nervous system can adjust its rate. Smooth muscle is found in the walls of hollow organs including the stomach, intestines, bladder, and blood vessels. It contracts slowly and steadily and is not under voluntary control. The diaphragm is the primary muscle of breathing. It is a dome-shaped sheet of muscle that sits below the lungs. When it contracts, it flattens and pulls downward, creating a drop in pressure inside the chest that draws air into the lungs. The lungs together contain around 300 million tiny air sacs called alveoli. These thin-walled structures are surrounded by capillaries, and it is here that oxygen passes from inhaled air into the blood, while carbon dioxide passes in the opposite direction to be exhaled. If all the alveoli in both lungs were unfolded and spread flat, their total surface area would be between 70 and 100 square meters. The average adult breathes around 12 to 20 times per minute while at rest. Over the course of a day, this amounts to around 20,000 breaths. With each breath, the lungs move roughly half a liter of air. With maximum effort, the lungs can hold around 6 liters of air in most adults, though this varies with body size and fitness level. The right lung is slightly larger than the left. The left lung has a small indentation on its inner surface called the cardiac notch, which accommodates the position of the heart. The surface of the airways is lined with tiny hair-like structures called cilia. These move in coordinated waves to sweep mucus and trapped particles upward toward the throat, where they can be swallowed or expelled. This mechanism helps keep the lower airways clean. The human voice is produced by the vibration of the vocal cords, two folds of tissue stretched across the larynx. The pitch of the voice is determined by the tension and length of these folds. Higher tension produces a higher pitch. The range of frequencies the human ear can detect spans from around 20 Hz to 20,000 Hz. This range gradually narrows with age, particularly at the higher end. The inner ear contains the cochlea, a fluid-filled spiral structure that converts sound vibrations into electrical signals. The cochlea is divided into regions that respond to different frequencies, with higher frequencies processed near the base and lower frequencies near the apex. The inner ear also contains the vestibular system, which detects the orientation and movement of the head and contributes to the sense of balance. It consists of 3 semicircular canals oriented in different planes, allowing detection of rotation in any direction. The stomach enzyme pepsin begins the digestion of proteins. It is unusual in that it functions best at a very low pH, which is why it works effectively in the acidic environment of the stomach. Hormones are chemical messengers that travel through the bloodstream to target cells and tissues. The body produces dozens of different hormones, each with specific target cells and specific effects. Some act within seconds, while others produce changes that unfold over days or weeks. The pituitary gland, located at the base of the brain, is sometimes called the master gland because it produces hormones that regulate many other glands throughout the body. It is roughly the size of a pea. The thyroid gland, located in the neck, produces hormones that regulate metabolism, heart rate, and body temperature. An overactive thyroid tends to accelerate these processes, while an underactive one tends to slow them down. The pineal gland, also located in the brain, produces melatonin, a hormone that helps regulate the sleep-wake cycle. Melatonin production increases in darkness and decreases in light, helping to align the body's internal clock with the external day-night cycle. The human body has an internal clock called the circadian rhythm, which follows a cycle of roughly 24 hours. This rhythm influences sleep timing, body temperature, hormone release, digestion, and many other physiological processes. The circadian rhythm is coordinated by a small region of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, which receives light information directly from the eyes and uses it to synchronize the body's internal timing with the environment. Every cell in the body contains its own molecular clock, driven by a feedback loop of proteins that cycle in concentration over a 24-hour period. These peripheral clocks are synchronized with the central clock in the brain through hormonal and neural signals. Sleep is divided into several distinct stages that cycle throughout the night. The two broad categories are non-rapid eye movement sleep and rapid eye movement sleep. Each full cycle lasts around 90 minutes and repeats multiple times over the course of a typical night. During the deeper stages of non-rapid eye movement sleep, the body carries out much of its physical maintenance. Growth hormone is released in significant quantities during this time, supporting tissue repair, muscle growth, and immune function. Rapid eye movement sleep, commonly known as REM sleep, is the stage most associated with vivid dreaming. During this stage, the brain shows activity patterns similar to waking, while the body's major muscles are temporarily paralyzed. This paralysis is thought to prevent physical acting out of dream content. The average adult requires between 7 and 9 hours of sleep per night. Sleep needs vary with age. Newborns sleep for up to 17 hours per day. Teenagers require around 8 to 10 hours. Older adults often experience changes in sleep architecture, spending less time in deeper stages. During sleep, the heart rate slows and blood pressure drops. Breathing becomes slower and more regular. Body temperature decreases slightly. These changes reduce the workload on the cardiovascular system and are associated with lower long-term risk of heart disease. Memory consolidation is one of the key functions of sleep. During sleep, the brain replays and strengthens connections related to experiences from the day. Both declarative memory, which covers facts and events, and procedural memory, which covers skills and habits, benefit from adequate sleep. The immune system is closely connected to sleep. During sleep, the body produces and releases cytokines, which are signaling proteins that help coordinate immune responses. Chronic sleep deprivation is associated with reduced immune function and greater susceptibility to illness. The human immune system distinguishes between the body's own cells and foreign substances through a system of molecular markers. Cells of the body display specific proteins on their surface that identify them as self. Cells lacking these markers, or displaying unfamiliar ones, are flagged for investigation or destruction. The digestive system begins its work before food even enters the mouth. The sight and smell of food can trigger the release of saliva and digestive juices in anticipation of a meal. This is sometimes called the cephalic phase of digestion. Chewing breaks food into smaller pieces and mixes it with saliva. The enzyme amylase in saliva begins breaking down starch molecules into shorter chains of sugars. Swallowing is a complex coordinated action involving over 20 muscles and taking less than a second to complete. Once swallowed, food enters the esophagus, a muscular tube around 25 centimeters long that connects the throat to the stomach. Food is moved through the esophagus not by gravity but by wave-like muscular contractions called peristalsis. This is why it is possible to swallow even while lying down or upside down. A muscular ring called the lower esophageal sphincter separates the esophagus from the stomach. It opens to allow food to pass and then closes to prevent stomach contents from flowing back upward. When this sphincter does not close properly, stomach acid can enter the esophagus, causing the sensation known as heartburn. The stomach churns food with acid and enzymes, gradually breaking it down into a semi-liquid mixture called chyme. The stomach empties at a rate that depends on the composition of the meal. Liquids pass through quickly. Fats take the longest. The pyloric sphincter controls the release of chyme from the stomach into the small intestine. It opens in small bursts, releasing a few milliliters at a time, allowing the small intestine to process the material gradually rather than being overwhelmed all at once. The first section of the small intestine, called the duodenum, receives digestive secretions from both the pancreas and the liver. Pancreatic juice contains enzymes that break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Bile from the liver helps emulsify fats, breaking them into smaller droplets that enzymes can act upon more effectively. Bile is produced in the liver and stored in the gallbladder, a small pouch on the underside of the liver. When a fatty meal enters the duodenum, a hormone called cholecystokinin signals the gallbladder to contract and release bile into the small intestine. The middle section of the small intestine, called the jejunum, is where most nutrient absorption takes place. The inner surface is folded and covered in villi and microvilli, creating an enormous surface area through which amino acids, sugars, fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals can be absorbed into the bloodstream. The final section of the small intestine, the ileum, absorbs any remaining nutrients, including vitamin B12 and bile salts that are recycled back to the liver. The ileum connects to the large intestine at a junction guarded by the ileocecal valve, which prevents backflow. The large intestine absorbs water and electrolytes from the remaining material, gradually converting it from a liquid into a more solid consistency. The process takes between 12 and 48 hours depending on many factors including diet, hydration, and physical activity. The gut microbiome assists with this final stage of digestion, fermenting fibers that human enzymes cannot break down. This fermentation produces short-chain fatty acids that serve as fuel for the cells lining the colon and have beneficial effects on the gut lining and immune function. The enteric nervous system, sometimes called the second brain, is a network of around 100 million neurons embedded in the walls of the digestive tract. It can operate independently of the central nervous system, coordinating the complex movements and secretions of the gut without requiring instructions from the brain. The enteric nervous system uses many of the same neurotransmitters found in the brain, including serotonin. Around 90% of the body's total serotonin is found in the gut, where it plays a role in coordinating intestinal movements. The liver receives blood from two sources simultaneously. The hepatic artery brings oxygenated blood from the heart. The portal vein brings nutrient-rich blood directly from the intestines. The liver processes this combined blood supply, extracting nutrients, removing toxins, and regulating the levels of various substances before the blood continues to the rest of the body. The liver produces around 800 to 1,000 milliliters of bile per day. It also synthesizes most of the proteins found in blood plasma, including albumin, which maintains fluid balance, and clotting factors, which are essential for stopping bleeding. Long-term memory storage involves physical changes in the structure of synapses. Proteins are synthesized, receptor numbers change, and the physical size and shape of synaptic connections are altered. These structural changes allow memories to persist for years or even decades. The hippocampus, a curved structure located in the inner part of the temporal lobe, plays a central role in forming new declarative memories. Damage to the hippocampus can prevent the formation of new long-term memories while leaving older memories largely intact. The amygdala, located near the hippocampus, is involved in processing emotionally significant events. It can enhance the consolidation of memories for emotionally arousing experiences, which is why events with strong emotional associations are often remembered with particular clarity and detail. The prefrontal cortex, located at the front of the brain, is involved in working memory, decision-making, and the regulation of behavior. It is one of the last brain regions to fully mature, with development continuing into the mid-20s. The brain's white matter consists of myelinated nerve fibers that connect different regions of the brain to each other. The integrity of white matter pathways influences how efficiently different brain regions communicate and coordinate their activity. The thalamus sits near the center of the brain and acts as a relay station for sensory information. Most sensory signals, with the exception of smell, pass through the thalamus before being routed to the appropriate areas of the cortex for processing. The hypothalamus, located just below the thalamus, is a small but exceptionally important structure. It regulates body temperature, hunger, thirst, sleep, circadian rhythms, and the release of hormones from the pituitary gland. Despite being only about the size of an almond, it coordinates a wide range of the body's most fundamental functions. The brain receives blood through two pairs of arteries, the internal carotid arteries and the vertebral arteries. These connect at the base of the brain to form a circular arrangement of vessels called the Circle of Willis, which helps ensure that blood flow to the brain is maintained even if one of the supply vessels becomes partially blocked. The blood-brain barrier is a selective filtering system formed by the cells lining the blood vessels of the brain. It allows water, oxygen, glucose, and certain other molecules to pass through while restricting the entry of many other substances, including most bacteria and a wide range of chemical compounds. The heart muscle itself is supplied with blood by the coronary arteries, which branch off from the aorta just above the heart. Despite pumping blood continuously through the rest of the body, the heart muscle cannot use the blood passing through its own chambers and relies entirely on this external supply. The aorta is the largest blood vessel in the body. It carries oxygenated blood from the left ventricle of the heart and branches into a network of vessels that supply the entire body. The wall of the aorta contains elastic fibers that allow it to expand slightly with each heartbeat and then recoil, helping to smooth the flow of blood. Capillaries are the smallest blood vessels in the body, with walls only 1 cell thick. They are so narrow that red blood cells must pass through them in single file, often bending their shapes slightly to fit. It is through the thin capillary walls that oxygen, nutrients, and waste products are exchanged between the blood and the body's tissues. The total length of all capillaries in the human body is estimated at around 40,000 kilometers. Together with arteries, veins, and all other vessels, the complete circulatory network stretches for around 100,000 kilometers. The lymphatic system returns fluid that has leaked out of capillaries back into the bloodstream. Without this function, fluid would gradually accumulate in the tissues. The lymphatic vessels have no pump equivalent to the heart and rely instead on the movement of surrounding muscles and the pressure of breathing to keep lymph flowing. The body's cells communicate with each other through a variety of mechanisms. Some signals are electrical, traveling rapidly along nerve fibers. Others are chemical, diffusing across short distances between neighboring cells or traveling through the bloodstream to reach distant targets. Gap junctions are channels that connect the interiors of adjacent cells directly, allowing small molecules and electrical signals to pass from one cell to the next without entering the space between them. They are found in cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and many other tissues where coordinated activity is important. The human eye can distinguish between approximately 10 million different shades of color. Most of this processing happens not in the eye itself, but in the visual cortex at the back of the brain. The eye moves around 100,000 times each day in small, rapid movements called saccades. These happen so quickly and so naturally that you almost never notice them. The cornea is the only tissue in the human body with no blood vessels. It receives its oxygen directly from the air and from the fluid surrounding it. Your nose can detect around 1 trillion different smells, according to some estimates. The olfactory system, which processes scent, is one of the oldest sensory systems in evolutionary terms. The sense of smell is directly connected to the limbic system, the area of the brain involved in memory and emotion. This is why certain smells can bring back memories with unusual immediacy. Each human fingertip contains around 3,000 touch receptors. These receptors allow us to detect pressure, texture, temperature, and vibration with a great deal of precision. Fingerprints form during fetal development, between the 10th and 24th week of pregnancy. They are shaped by a combination of genetics and the physical environment inside the womb, which is why even identical twins have slightly different fingerprints. The skin is the largest organ of the human body. In an average adult, it covers an area of around 2 square meters and accounts for roughly 15% of total body weight. Skin renews itself approximately every 27 days. The outer layer, the epidermis, gradually sheds dead cells and replaces them with new ones in a continuous cycle. The human body sheds around 30 to 40,000 dead skin cells every hour. Over the course of a year, this adds up to roughly 1.5 to 2 kilograms of skin. Beneath the skin, there are over 5 million hair follicles across the entire human body. Of these, around 100,000 are located on the scalp. Hair grows at an average rate of about 15 centimeters per year. Each individual hair follicle follows its own cycle of growth, rest, and shedding, independent of the follicles around it. The human heart beats approximately 100,000 times per day. Over the course of a lifetime of around 70 to 80 years, that amounts to more than 2.5 billion heartbeats. The heart begins beating around 3 weeks after conception and continues without pause until the end of life. It requires no external signal to maintain its rhythm. The sinoatrial node, a small cluster of cells in the upper right chamber, generates the electrical impulse that keeps the heart in motion. Each beat of the heart pushes blood through a network of blood vessels totaling around 100,000 kilometers in length. That is roughly 2.5 times the circumference of the Earth. The body contains approximately 5 liters of blood in an average adult. This blood completes a full circuit through the entire body in about 60 seconds while the body is at rest. Red blood cells are among the most numerous cells in the body. There are around 5 million in every single drop of blood. Each red blood cell lives for approximately 120 days before being broken down and replaced. Red blood cells do not contain a nucleus. This is unusual among human cells. The absence of a nucleus allows more room for hemoglobin, the protein responsible for carrying oxygen through the bloodstream. The human body produces around 2 million new red blood cells every second. This production happens primarily in the red bone marrow, which is found inside certain bones including the sternum, the ribs, and the pelvis. White blood cells are far less numerous than red blood cells, but they are considerably larger and more varied in function. There are several different types, each with a specific role in identifying and responding to foreign substances in the body. Some white blood cells can live for only a few days. Others, known as memory cells, can persist in the body for decades, retaining the ability to recognize a pathogen that the immune system has encountered before. Platelets are the smallest of the 3 main types of blood cells. They are not complete cells but rather small fragments of larger cells. Their primary role is to gather at the site of a wound and help form a clot to slow or stop bleeding. The lymphatic system runs parallel to the circulatory system throughout most of the body. It carries a clear fluid called lymph, which helps transport immune cells, remove waste products from tissues, and absorb dietary fats from the digestive tract. The shoulder joint has the greatest range of motion of any joint in the body. This mobility comes at the cost of stability, which is why shoulder dislocations are relatively common compared to dislocations of more constrained joints. Synovial fluid lubricates the joints of the body. It is produced by the synovial membrane that lines joint cavities and has a consistency somewhat similar to egg white. It reduces friction between the cartilage surfaces of joints and provides nutrients to the cartilage. The cracking sound that occurs when a joint is manipulated is thought to result from the rapid formation or collapse of gas bubbles within the synovial fluid. Research has shown that this does not appear to cause joint damage, though the exact mechanism is still a subject of some investigation. The human body begins as a single fertilized cell. This cell divides repeatedly, and through a process of differentiation, the resulting cells gradually take on specialized roles and organize themselves into tissues, organs, and systems. The entire process from fertilization to birth takes around 38 weeks. During fetal development, the brain grows at a remarkable pace. In the third trimester alone, the brain increases in volume by around 250%. The surface folding of the cortex develops during this period, increasing the brain's processing capacity within the fixed space of the skull. A newborn baby's brain is around 25% of its adult size. By the age of 2, it has grown to around 80% of its adult size. This rapid early growth is accompanied by an equally rapid increase in synaptic connections, followed later by a process of pruning in which less used connections are eliminated. The human body continues to change throughout life. Bone density typically peaks in the late 20s and gradually declines thereafter. Muscle mass tends to peak in the 30s and 40s. The lens of the eye gradually becomes less flexible with age, which is why many people require reading glasses as they get older. The skin becomes thinner and less elastic with age as collagen production slows. The number of active hair follicles decreases, and the pigment cells in remaining hair follicles gradually stop producing melanin, causing hair to turn gray or white. Despite these gradual changes, the fundamental processes that sustain life continue with remarkable consistency across the decades. Cells divide, proteins are assembled, signals travel through nerves, the heart beats, and the lungs breathe. All of it continuing quietly, without interruption. The body you are resting in right now is carrying out thousands of processes simultaneously. None of them require your attention. None of them need your help. They simply continue, as they always have, steady and unhurried, through every hour of every day, and through every quiet night of rest. The human body replaces most of its cells over time, though at different rates depending on the cell type. Red blood cells last around 120 days. Skin cells last around 2 to 3 weeks. Liver cells are replaced roughly every 300 to 500 days. Some neurons in the brain, however, last an entire lifetime without being replaced. The cells lining the stomach are replaced every few days due to the harsh acidic environment they are exposed to. The cells lining the small intestine are replaced every 2 to 4 days, making the intestinal lining one of the most rapidly renewing surfaces in the body. Bone cells called osteocytes can live for decades. They sit within the bone matrix and maintain communication with neighboring cells through tiny channels. Despite their long lifespan, the bone tissue around them is continuously being renewed by the activity of osteoblasts and osteoclasts. The lens of the eye is unusual in that its central cells are never replaced. They are laid down during fetal development and remain for the entire life of the person. This is why the lens accumulates changes over time, gradually becoming less transparent and less flexible with age. Neurons in the cerebral cortex are also largely retained throughout life. While new neurons are generated in a small number of brain regions, the vast majority of cortical neurons present in adulthood were formed before birth. The brain's adaptability comes not from replacing neurons but from constantly modifying the connections between them. The process by which the brain modifies its connections in response to experience is called synaptic plasticity. When two neurons are repeatedly active at the same time, the connection between them tends to strengthen. When they are rarely active together, the connection tends to weaken. This principle underlies learning and memory at the cellular level. The thymus gland, located in the chest behind the sternum, is where a type of immune cell called a T cell matures. The thymus is largest and most active during childhood and gradually shrinks with age, though it continues to function throughout life. Antibodies are proteins produced by immune cells called B cells. Each antibody is shaped to bind to a specific target, called an antigen. Once bound, the antibody can neutralize the target directly or mark it for destruction by other immune cells. The body can produce an enormous variety of different antibodies through a process of genetic recombination that occurs during the development of B cells. Estimates suggest the immune system can generate more than 1 billion distinct antibody structures. Inflammation is one of the immune system's primary responses to injury or infection. It involves increased blood flow to the affected area, the recruitment of immune cells, and the release of signaling molecules. While acute inflammation is a protective response, chronic inflammation is associated with a wide range of health conditions. The skin itself functions as a significant barrier against pathogens. Its surface is slightly acidic, which inhibits the growth of many microorganisms. The skin also hosts a community of harmless bacteria that compete with potentially harmful ones for space and resources. Tears contain an enzyme called lysozyme that can break down the cell walls of certain bacteria. Tears are produced continuously in small amounts to keep the surface of the eye moist and clean, not only during emotional responses. Saliva also contains lysozyme as well as other antimicrobial compounds. The average person produces between 1 and 2 liters of saliva per day. Saliva begins the process of digestion by moistening food and containing an enzyme that starts breaking down starches. The tongue contains around 10,000 taste buds in an average adult. These are located primarily on small raised structures called papillae. Each taste bud contains 50 to 100 receptor cells that respond to the 5 basic taste qualities of sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. Taste buds are replaced approximately every 10 to 14 days. This is why certain illnesses or medical treatments that affect rapidly dividing cells can temporarily alter or reduce the sense of taste. The sense of taste is closely linked to the sense of smell. Much of what is perceived as the flavor of food is actually contributed by the aroma compounds detected by the olfactory system. When the nose is blocked, the perception of flavor is significantly reduced. The human nose contains around 400 different types of olfactory receptors. Different smells activate different combinations of these receptors, and the brain interprets the pattern of activation as a specific scent. The olfactory receptor genes make up the largest gene family in the human genome. Humans have around 400 functional olfactory receptor genes, along with several hundred more that are no longer functional but remain present in the genome. Color vision in humans is made possible by 3 types of cone cells in the retina, each sensitive to a different range of light wavelengths corresponding roughly to red, green, and blue. The brain combines the signals from these 3 types to produce the full range of color perception. The retina also contains rod cells, which are sensitive to low levels of light but do not distinguish color. Rods are responsible for vision in dim conditions and are more numerous and more widely distributed across the retina than cones. The blind spot is a small area of the retina where the optic nerve connects to the eye. There are no photoreceptors in this region, creating a gap in the visual field. The brain fills in this gap using information from the surrounding area, so the blind spot is not normally perceived. The optic nerves from both eyes meet at a point called the optic chiasm, where fibers from the inner half of each retina cross to the opposite side of the brain. This arrangement means that visual information from the left side of the visual field is processed in the right hemisphere, and vice versa. The human brain processes visual information through multiple parallel pathways simultaneously. One pathway is primarily involved in identifying what an object is. Another is primarily involved in locating where it is and guiding movement toward it. These two pathways are sometimes called the ventral and dorsal streams. The brain devotes a disproportionately large amount of its processing resources to the hands and face. This is reflected in the sensory and motor cortices, where the areas representing the hands and face are much larger than would be expected based purely on their physical size. A single cell may contain anywhere from a few hundred to several thousand mitochondria, depending on its energy demands. Heart muscle cells and liver cells, which have very high energy needs, are among the most mitochondria-rich cells in the body. Mitochondria have their own DNA, separate from the DNA in the cell's nucleus. This mitochondrial DNA is circular, similar to bacterial DNA, and is inherited almost exclusively from the mother. It encodes a small number of proteins essential for mitochondrial function. The energy demands of the brain are exceptionally high relative to its size. Although the brain accounts for only around 2% of body weight, it consumes roughly 20% of the body's total energy. This energy is used to maintain ion gradients across neuron membranes, synthesize neurotransmitters, and support the continuous activity of neural circuits. Neurotransmitters are chemical messengers released by neurons at synapses. When an electrical signal reaches the end of a nerve fiber, it triggers the release of neurotransmitter molecules into the small gap between neurons called the synaptic cleft. These molecules bind to receptors on the neighboring neuron, influencing whether it becomes more or less likely to generate its own electrical signal. There are many different neurotransmitters in the human nervous system. Glutamate is the most abundant excitatory neurotransmitter, increasing the likelihood that the receiving neuron will fire. GABA is the most abundant inhibitory neurotransmitter, reducing this likelihood. The balance between excitation and inhibition is essential for normal brain function. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter involved in motivation, reward, movement, and several other functions. It is released in response to rewarding experiences and plays a central role in the brain's systems for learning what behaviors are worth repeating. Serotonin influences mood, appetite, sleep, and other functions. It is produced primarily in the raphe nuclei of the brainstem and projects to wide areas of the brain. Many commonly used medications for mood disorders work by modifying the availability of serotonin at synapses. Noradrenaline, also called norepinephrine, is both a neurotransmitter in the brain and a hormone released by the adrenal glands. In the brain, it plays a role in attention, arousal, and the stress response. As a hormone, it acts on the heart and blood vessels to prepare the body for physical activity. Acetylcholine was the first neurotransmitter to be discovered. It is used at the junctions between motor neurons and muscle fibers, where it triggers muscle contraction. It is also widely used in the autonomic nervous system and in various areas of the brain involved in attention and memory. Endorphins are neurotransmitters that bind to the same receptors as opioid pain-relieving substances. They are released in response to pain, stress, and vigorous physical activity and produce a reduction in pain perception and a mild sense of well-being. The body has several other internal communication systems beyond the nervous system and the endocrine system. Paracrine signaling involves cells releasing molecules that act on neighboring cells. Autocrine signaling involves cells releasing molecules that act on the cells themselves. These local signaling systems allow fine-grained coordination of cellular activity within tissues. The immune system communicates extensively through cytokines, small proteins that can act locally or travel through the bloodstream. Different cytokines promote inflammation, suppress it, stimulate cell growth, trigger cell death, or recruit specific immune cells to a site of infection or injury. Cell death is itself a carefully regulated process. Apoptosis is a form of programmed cell death in which a cell dismantles itself in an orderly way without triggering inflammation. It is essential for normal development, for maintaining tissue balance, and for eliminating damaged or potentially dangerous cells. Around 50 to 70 billion cells undergo apoptosis in the human body every day. The cell cycle is the sequence of events through which a cell grows and divides. It is tightly regulated by a series of checkpoint mechanisms that ensure division proceeds only when conditions are appropriate and the DNA has been accurately replicated. Failures in these regulatory mechanisms are associated with uncontrolled cell growth. DNA damage can occur from many sources, including radiation, certain chemicals, and errors during replication. The cell has multiple repair mechanisms to detect and correct different types of DNA damage. If damage is too extensive to repair, the cell may undergo apoptosis rather than passing the damaged DNA on to daughter cells. The hands contain a dense network of tendons, bones, and muscles that allow for an exceptional range of precise movements. The fingers have no muscles of their own. All finger movement is controlled by muscles located in the hand and forearm, connected to the finger bones by long tendons. The human hand contains 27 bones. These are divided into the 8 carpal bones of the wrist, the 5 metacarpal bones of the palm, and the 14 phalanges of the fingers and thumb. This arrangement allows for a wide range of grip types and fine motor movements. The thumb is opposable, meaning it can move across the palm to meet the other fingers. This capability, along with the precision grip it enables, has been central to the development of tool use throughout human history. Fingernails grow at an average rate of around 3 to 4 millimeters per month. Toenails grow more slowly, at around 1.5 millimeters per month. Nails grow faster in summer than in winter and faster on the dominant hand than the non-dominant one. Nails are made of a protein called keratin, the same protein that makes up hair and the outer layer of skin. The visible part of the nail is called the nail plate, and it grows from a region beneath the base of the nail called the nail matrix. The human foot contains 26 bones, 33 joints, and over 100 muscles, tendons, and ligaments. The arch of the foot acts as a spring, storing and releasing energy with each step, which reduces the muscular effort required for walking. Walking is a remarkably complex mechanical process involving the coordinated activation of dozens of muscles and the continuous adjustment of balance. The brain and spinal cord manage this coordination largely automatically, without requiring conscious attention once the skill has been learned. The average person takes between 5,000 and 8,000 steps per day. Over a lifetime of around 70 to 80 years, this amounts to walking a distance equivalent to several times around the circumference of the Earth. The heel bone, called the calcaneus, is the largest bone in the foot. It absorbs a significant amount of the impact force generated with each step. The Achilles tendon, the thickest and strongest tendon in the body, attaches the calf muscles to the calcaneus. Tendons connect muscles to bones and transmit the force generated by muscle contraction. Ligaments connect bones to other bones at joints, providing stability and limiting excessive movement. Both are made primarily of collagen, a structural protein. Collagen is the most abundant protein in the human body, making up around 30% of total protein content. It provides structural support and tensile strength in skin, bones, tendons, ligaments, cartilage, and blood vessel walls. Cartilage is a firm but flexible connective tissue found at the ends of bones and joints, in the nose and ears, and in several other locations. It has no blood vessels and receives its nutrients by diffusion from surrounding fluid. This limited blood supply means it heals slowly when damaged. The intervertebral discs that sit between the vertebrae of the spine are made largely of cartilage. They act as cushions, absorbing compression forces and allowing the spine to bend and twist. Over the course of a day, these discs gradually compress slightly under the body's weight, which is why most people are very slightly shorter in the evening than in the morning. The spine consists of 33 vertebrae arranged in 5 regions. The cervical region of the neck has 7 vertebrae. The thoracic region of the mid-back has 12. The lumbar region of the lower back has 5. Below these are the sacrum, formed by 5 fused vertebrae, and the coccyx, formed by 4 fused vertebrae. The spine has 4 natural curves when viewed from the side. These curves distribute the forces of weight bearing more evenly than a straight column would and contribute to the spine's flexibility and shock-absorbing capacity. The joints of the body come in several types, each suited to different ranges and types of motion. Ball and socket joints, found at the hip and shoulder, allow movement in multiple directions. Hinge joints, found at the elbow and knee, allow bending and straightening in a single plane. The knee is the largest joint in the body. It is supported by 4 main ligaments and 2 crescent-shaped cartilage structures called menisci, which help distribute load and stabilize the joint. Despite this support, it is one of the joints most commonly affected by injury. The hip joint is a deep ball and socket joint that provides both a wide range of motion and considerable stability. The ball of the femur fits snugly into a deep cup in the pelvis called the acetabulum, held in place by strong ligaments and surrounded by powerful muscles. Telomeres are protective caps at the ends of chromosomes, similar in function to the plastic tips on shoelaces. They shorten slightly each time a cell divides. When telomeres become critically short, the cell typically stops dividing and enters a state called senescence. This process is thought to be one of the mechanisms underlying cellular aging. The enzyme telomerase can extend telomeres, allowing cells to continue dividing. It is active in stem cells, immune cells, and reproductive cells, where ongoing division is essential. Most other cells in the body have low or absent telomerase activity. Throughout all of this, through every cycle and signal and quiet repair, the body remains simply itself. Breathing in the darkness. Heart steady and unhurried. Cells going about their work in the soft silence of the night, as they have always done, asking nothing, needing nothing, simply continuing on. The human body's relationship with time is written into its biology at every level. From the molecular clocks ticking inside individual cells to the broad rhythms of growth and aging that unfold over decades, time is woven into the fabric of what the body is and how it works. Circadian rhythms influence not just sleep and waking but the timing of nearly every physiological process. Body temperature follows a circadian pattern, dipping to its lowest point in the early hours of the morning and rising through the day. Blood pressure follows a similar pattern, typically lowest during sleep and rising sharply in the early morning hours. The timing of hormone release is also circadian. Cortisol levels rise steeply in the hours before waking, preparing the body for the demands of the day. Growth hormone is released primarily during deep sleep. Melatonin rises in darkness and falls with light. These hormonal rhythms coordinate activity across organ systems in a way that aligns with the expected demands of the day-night cycle. Disruption of circadian rhythms through shift work, irregular sleep schedules, or exposure to artificial light at night is associated with a range of physiological consequences. The body's systems become desynchronized from each other and from the external environment, which over time can affect metabolic function, immune responses, and cardiovascular health. Light is the most powerful signal for resetting the circadian clock. Specialized cells in the retina called intrinsically photosensitive retinal ganglion cells contain a photopigment called melanopsin, which is particularly sensitive to short-wavelength blue light. These cells send signals directly to the suprachiasmatic nucleus to synchronize the body's internal timing with the light-dark cycle. Exercise, meal timing, and social interaction also influence the circadian system, though less powerfully than light. The timing of meals in particular appears to have significant effects on metabolic processes, with the body processing nutrients somewhat differently depending on the time of day they are consumed. The cardiovascular system shows strong circadian variation in its susceptibility to certain events. Heart attacks and strokes occur more frequently in the early morning hours, coinciding with the rise in blood pressure, the increase in platelet stickiness, and changes in the activity of the autonomic nervous system that occur around the time of waking. The immune system also follows circadian patterns. The number and activity of various immune cells fluctuate over the course of the day. The response to vaccination, for example, has been shown to vary depending on the time of day the vaccine is administered, with some studies suggesting stronger antibody responses when vaccination occurs in the morning. The body's sensitivity to pain follows a circadian pattern as well. Pain thresholds tend to be highest in the afternoon and lower in the early hours of the morning, which is consistent with clinical observations that pain tends to feel more intense at night. Drug metabolism is influenced by circadian rhythms because the enzymes responsible for breaking down medications in the liver show time-of-day variation in their activity. This has led to growing interest in chronopharmacology, the study of how timing of medication administration affects its effectiveness and side effects. The body's temperature regulation becomes less precise with age. Older adults are more vulnerable to both heat and cold because the mechanisms that detect temperature change and trigger compensatory responses become less sensitive and less responsive over time. The cardiovascular system undergoes gradual changes with age. The walls of arteries become stiffer as the elastic fibers within them are progressively replaced by collagen. This increased stiffness raises systolic blood pressure and increases the workload on the heart. The heart muscle itself may become slightly thicker in response. Glucose regulation is one of the liver's most important functions. After a meal, the liver absorbs excess glucose from the portal blood and stores it as glycogen. Between meals, it breaks glycogen back down and releases glucose into the bloodstream to maintain stable blood sugar levels. When glycogen stores are depleted, the liver can synthesize new glucose from amino acids and other precursors through a process called gluconeogenesis. The pancreas produces around 1.5 liters of digestive juice per day. This fluid is alkaline, which helps neutralize the acidic chyme arriving from the stomach and creates the appropriate pH for the digestive enzymes of the small intestine to function. The islets of Langerhans in the pancreas contain several cell types. Alpha cells produce glucagon, which raises blood sugar. Beta cells produce insulin, which lowers blood sugar. Delta cells produce somatostatin, which helps regulate the release of both insulin and glucagon. Together, these hormones maintain blood glucose within a narrow and stable range. The kidneys receive around 20 to 25% of the heart's total output with every beat, despite making up less than 1% of body weight. This disproportionately large blood supply reflects the intensity of the filtering work they perform continuously. Each nephron in the kidney filters blood through a tiny knot of capillaries called a glomerulus. The filtered fluid then passes through a series of tubules where useful substances including glucose, amino acids, and most of the water are reabsorbed back into the blood. What remains is concentrated into urine. The kidneys also produce a hormone called erythropoietin, which stimulates the bone marrow to produce red blood cells. When the kidneys detect low oxygen levels in the blood, erythropoietin production increases, leading to greater red blood cell production and improved oxygen carrying capacity over the following days and weeks. And so it continues, through the night and through every quiet hour, this vast and intricate system sustaining itself without interruption. Every organ contributing, every cell doing its part. The body simply going on, as it always does, steady and unhurried, in the soft and unnoticed background of everything. The human body maintains a precise internal environment through a principle called homeostasis. This refers to the tendency of biological systems to resist change and remain stable despite constant fluctuation in the external world. Temperature, fluid balance, blood pressure, blood sugar, and dozens of other variables are all regulated within narrow ranges through continuous feedback and adjustment. Feedback loops are the fundamental mechanism of homeostasis. In a negative feedback loop, a change in a variable triggers a response that counteracts the change and returns the variable toward its set point. Most of the body's regulatory systems operate through negative feedback. Positive feedback loops, in which a change amplifies itself, are less common but occur in specific situations such as blood clotting and childbirth. The body's set points are not fixed absolutely. They can shift in response to changing conditions. Body temperature, for example, is actively raised during fever as part of the immune response. The higher temperature creates a less favorable environment for many pathogens and may enhance the activity of certain immune cells. Fever is generated when immune cells release signaling molecules called pyrogens. These travel to the hypothalamus and cause it to raise its temperature set point. The body then generates heat through shivering and conserves it by constricting blood vessels near the skin's surface until the new higher temperature is reached. The body's response to cold follows a similar logic. When core temperature drops, the hypothalamus triggers shivering, reduces blood flow to the extremities, and increases metabolic heat production. Brown adipose tissue, a type of fat found in greater quantities in infants and in smaller amounts in adults, can generate heat directly through a process that does not produce mechanical work. Brown adipose tissue contains a high density of mitochondria, the energy-producing structures within cells. It generates heat by allowing the mitochondria to run their energy-producing reactions in a way that releases energy as heat rather than storing it as chemical energy. This process is called non-shivering thermogenesis. Mitochondria are present in nearly every cell of the body. They produce the majority of the cell's energy in the form of a molecule called adenosine triphosphate, commonly known as ADP. ADP is the universal energy currency of the cell, used to power virtually every energy-requiring process from muscle contraction to protein synthesis. The surface of every cell is covered with a complex arrangement of proteins and carbohydrates that form a kind of molecular identity code. These surface molecules mediate communication between cells, allow cells to adhere to each other, and enable the immune system to distinguish between the body's own cells and foreign material. Stem cells are undifferentiated cells that retain the ability to divide and give rise to more specialized cell types. They are found in many tissues throughout the body and play a role in ongoing maintenance and repair. Bone marrow contains stem cells that continuously produce all the different types of blood cells throughout life. The body's repair processes are remarkably coordinated. When tissue is damaged, a cascade of signals recruits immune cells to the site, stimulates the proliferation of local cells, promotes the formation of new blood vessels, and gradually replaces damaged tissue with new material. The entire sequence unfolds over days to weeks depending on the extent of the damage. Scar tissue forms when damage is extensive or healing is incomplete. It is made primarily of collagen, but lacks the organized structure of normal tissue. Scars in the skin have no hair follicles or sweat glands and are generally less flexible than the surrounding tissue. The liver is one of the organs most capable of regenerating after injury. Even if a significant portion of the liver is removed, the remaining tissue can proliferate to restore much of the original mass. This capacity has made partial liver transplantation possible. The heart and brain have much more limited regenerative capacity. For many years it was believed that the heart could not produce new muscle cells at all, but research has shown that a very small number of cardiomyocytes are replaced each year, though far too slowly to recover from significant injury. Throughout all of this, through the renewal and the repair, the signaling and the filtering, the beating and the breathing, the body simply continues. Each system supporting the others. Each process fitting quietly into the next. All of it happening now, as it has always happened, while you rest. The air moving slowly in and out of your lungs. The steady, unhurried rhythm of your heart. The soft and continuous work of everything inside you, asking nothing of you, needing nothing from you, simply going on. The human body produces around 250 milliliters of carbon dioxide every minute at rest. This gas is carried in the blood primarily as bicarbonate ions and is released into the lungs to be exhaled. The balance between carbon dioxide and oxygen in the blood is monitored continuously by sensors in the brainstem, which adjust the rate and depth of breathing accordingly. The chemoreceptors that monitor blood gases are located in two places. Central chemoreceptors sit in the brainstem itself, and respond primarily to changes in carbon dioxide and the acidity of the cerebrospinal fluid. Peripheral chemoreceptors, located in small structures near the heart called the carotid and aortic bodies, respond to both oxygen and carbon dioxide levels in the blood. Breathing is one of the few autonomic functions that can also be brought under voluntary control. A person can choose to breathe faster or slower, to hold their breath, or to take a deep breath. This dual control is unusual among the body's automatic processes. The diaphragm contracts and relaxes around 12 to 20 times per minute at rest. Each contraction pulls the diaphragm downward by about 1 to 2 centimeters during quiet breathing, and by considerably more during deep breathing or vigorous physical activity. The intercostal muscles, located between the ribs, assist the diaphragm in breathing. During inhalation, the external intercostal muscles contract and lift the rib cage outward and upward, increasing the volume of the chest cavity. During exhalation at rest, the rib cage falls largely under its own weight. Surfactant is a substance produced by cells in the alveoli that reduces surface tension in the air sacs. Without surfactant, the alveoli would tend to collapse at the end of each exhalation. Premature infants often lack sufficient surfactant, which can make breathing difficult until production increases. The respiratory system also plays a role in regulating the acid-base balance of the blood. By adjusting breathing rate, the body can alter the amount of carbon dioxide it retains or expels, which in turn influences blood acidity. This is one of the fastest acting mechanisms the body has for correcting changes in blood pH. The kidneys provide a slower but more powerful mechanism for regulating blood pH by adjusting the amounts of acid and bicarbonate excreted in urine. Together, the lungs and kidneys maintain blood pH within the narrow range of approximately 7.35 to 7.45 under normal conditions. The human body has around 600 to 700 lymph nodes distributed throughout it. These small, soft structures act as filtering stations where immune cells can identify and respond to foreign material in the lymph fluid. The spleen is the largest organ of the lymphatic system. It filters blood, removes old or damaged red blood cells, and stores a reserve of platelets and white blood cells that can be released when needed. The liver is the largest internal organ in the body, weighing around 1.5 kilograms in an average adult. It performs over 500 distinct functions, including filtering toxins from the blood, producing bile for digestion, storing glycogen for energy, and synthesizing proteins essential to blood clotting. The liver has a remarkable ability to regenerate. If a significant portion of liver tissue is removed, the remaining tissue can grow back to near its original size within a matter of weeks. The kidneys filter approximately 200 liters of blood every single day. From this, they produce around 1 to 2 liters of urine, which carries waste products and excess substances out of the body. Each kidney contains around 1 million tiny filtering units called nephrons. Together, they remove urea, creatinine, excess salts, and other waste materials from the bloodstream with considerable precision. The kidneys also regulate blood pressure by controlling fluid volume and by releasing a hormone called renin that influences the constriction of blood vessels. The adrenal glands, which sit on top of each kidney, produce over 50 different hormones. Among the most well-known are adrenaline, which prepares the body for rapid response, and cortisol, which plays a role in managing stress, metabolism, and inflammation. The pancreas serves two separate and distinct functions. Its exocrine cells produce digestive enzymes that are released into the small intestine. Its endocrine cells, clustered in regions called the islets of Langerhans, produce insulin and glucagon, hormones that regulate blood sugar levels. Insulin was first isolated and used as a treatment in 1921. Before that, a diagnosis of type 1 diabetes was almost universally fatal within a short period of time. The stomach produces a new layer of mucus approximately every 2 weeks. This protective lining prevents the acid inside the stomach from digesting the stomach wall itself. The pH of stomach acid ranges from around 1 to 3, making it roughly as acidic as battery acid. This environment is essential for breaking down food and killing most bacteria that enter with it. The small intestine, despite its name, is the longest part of the digestive tract. In an average adult, it measures between 6 and 7 meters in length. Its inner surface is covered in tiny finger-like projections called villi, which dramatically increase the surface area available for absorbing nutrients. If the entire inner surface of the small intestine were unfolded and spread flat, it would cover an area of around 250 square meters, roughly the size of a tennis court. The large intestine is considerably shorter than the small intestine, measuring around 1.5 meters. Its primary function is to absorb water from the remaining indigestible material and to compact waste before it is eliminated. The human gut is home to trillions of microorganisms, collectively known as the gut microbiome. The number of microbial cells in and on the human body is roughly equal to the number of human cells, though the microbiome varies greatly from person to person. These microorganisms assist with digestion, produce certain vitamins including vitamin K and some B vitamins, help regulate the immune system, and may influence mood and behavior through pathways connected to the brain. The gut and brain are connected by the vagus nerve, a long and branching nerve that carries signals in both directions between the digestive system and the brain. This connection is sometimes referred to as the gut-brain axis. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the body. It extends from the brainstem down through the neck and chest into the abdomen, touching the heart, lungs, and most of the digestive organs along the way. The human brain weighs approximately 1.5 kilograms. Despite accounting for only around 2% of total body weight, it consumes roughly 20% of the body's total energy supply. The brain is composed of around 86 billion neurons. Each neuron can form connections, called synapses, with thousands of other neurons. The total number of synaptic connections in a single human brain is estimated to be in the hundreds of trillions. Electrical signals travel through neurons at speeds ranging from around 1 meter per second in some fibers to over 100 meters per second in others, depending on whether the nerve fiber is coated in a protective layer called myelin.